troops arriving in Greenland. The Danish military just posting these images that we're showing you of troops arriving in Greenland. Looks like already in darkness tonight. And it comes as our Jim Sciutto is now reporting that President Trump said on a call with the British Prime Minister that he may have been given, quote, bad information on why European troops were sent to Greenland.
This is absolutely devastating. Trump just made a move that has NATO allies in full panic mode. Actual fear that the most successful military alliance in history is about to collapse. That 75 years of transatlantic partnership is ending. That the security framework protecting Europe and North America is being destroyed from within by American president who seems intent on burning it all down. And European leaders are scrambling, holding emergency meetings, deploying troops to show strength, threatening massive retaliation because they understand what's happening. Trump isn't just pressuring allies. He's signaling fundamental shift in American commitment to NATO, and nobody knows how to stop it. And the panic is spreading beyond Europe, because if Trump can threaten founding NATO member with military action and tariffs over territorial demands, if he can demand allies surrender sovereignty or face economic punishment, if he can treat mutual defense pact as negotiable, then every alliance America has is suddenly questionable. Every security guarantee is conditional. Every partnership is transactional. That's not how international order works. That's how international order collapses. And allies watching this unfold are making plans for a world where American protection cannot be trusted, where NATO no longer functions, where every country has to fend for itself. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe our channel, John Brown Show. Your subscription actually matters here. All right, let's get into what actually happened. Pentagon just announced plans to cut U.S. participation in NATO force structure and advisory groups. Washington Post broke the story January 20th. Not reducing funding, not scaling back one program, systematically withdrawing American personnel from alliance activities, letting positions go vacant instead of replacing troops when assignments end. That's deliberate drawdown. That's signaling retreat from Europe's defense. That's Trump administration executing long-threatened NATO exit strategy without actually triggering Article 5 withdrawal that would require Senate approval. But that's just one piece. Trump also threatened 8 NATO members with escalating tariffs unless they help him acquire Greenland. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Finland, all facing 10% tariffs starting February 1st, jumping to 25% June 1st, all because they won't pressure Denmark to sell territory that Trump wants. That's economic warfare against military allies. That's treating NATO members as enemies. That's unprecedented in alliance history. Share this video with everyone you know because the responses reveal just how panicked allies are. 7 NATO countries immediately deployed troops to Greenland as part of Operation Arctic Endurance. United Kingdom, Germany, Sweden, France, Norway, Netherlands, Finland, all sending military personnel to Danish territory to show solidarity, to demonstrate they'll defend allies' sovereignty, to signal they're united against American coercion. That's NATO members deploying against fellow NATO member. That's alliance fracturing in real time. Think about what that means. These aren't token gestures. Germany sent reconnaissance team. France deployed personnel. Multiple countries coordinating military operations specifically to counter American pressure. And they're calling it Arctic Endurance because they're preparing for long standoff, for sustained resistance to Trump's demands, for possibility that American president might actually try to seize allied territory. When your military allies are deploying troops to protect against you, the alliance is functionally over. Now let me walk you through why this is so much worse than previous Trump-NATO tensions. During first term, Trump threatened withdrawal but never actually reduced American participation, demanded allies increase defense spending but maintained U.S. commitments, complained constantly but kept alliance infrastructure intact. This time he's acting. Pentagon cutting participation in alliance activities, Trump threatening tariffs on founding members. Administration officials openly discussing NATO's irrelevance. That's not pressure tactics, that's systematic dismantling. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown's show because Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney gave speech at Davos that went viral, described rupture in world order, said American-dominated liberal system is tumbling down, talked about end of pleasant fiction and beginning of harsh reality where geopolitics has no limits or constraints, didn't mention Trump by name, but implication was crystal clear. And then Canada signed economic agreement with China. That's longtime American ally pivoting toward Beijing because they cannot trust Washington anymore. That's exactly what collapse of American-led order looks like. And Robert Kagan from Brookings Institution wrote devastating analysis, said American-dominated liberal world order is over. Not because United States proved materially incapable of sustaining it, but because United States decided it no longer wishes to play its role of providing global security, said American might that upheld world order for 80 years will now be used to destroy it. That's not partisan criticism. That's foreign policy expert with decades of experience saying Trump is deliberately ending American global leadership. Think about the Greenland situation specifically. Trump demanding Denmark sell territory, threatening military action when asked how far he'll go. European leaders warning any U.S. attempt to take Greenland by force would trigger Article 5. But Article doesn't specify what happens when attacker is NATO member. That's the nightmare scenario. If Trump actually tries military action against Denmark, every NATO country has to choose: defend ally against United States, or admit alliance is meaningless and American power is all that matters. Either choice destroys NATO. And Trump met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at Davos, claimed they reached framework agreement giving U.S. total access to Greenland. Permanent access with no time limit. But Denmark and Greenland immediately contradicted him, said sovereignty is red line, said no discussions about changing that occurred, said they're open to security cooperation but not territorial concessions. So either Trump is lying about the agreement, or he thinks he can pressure Denmark into accepting terms they're publicly rejecting. Either way creates crisis. Notice what European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said, called tariff threats hostile act against close military allies that threatens fabric of transatlantic partnership. Framed this not as trade dispute, but as test of Western values. Said Europe chooses partnership and cooperation. That's sharp rebuke. That's European leader explicitly contrasting European approach with American coercion. That's alliance openly fracturing along values divide. And Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni criticized Trump's Greenland approach despite generally good relations with him. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz warned against being too quiet about American aggression. French President Macron said world shifting to one without rules. These aren't anti-American politicians. These are center-right leaders who should be Trump's natural allies, and they're all pushing back publicly, all warning about consequences, all preparing for a world where American alliance cannot be trusted. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because bipartisan Senate delegation traveled to Greenland to highlight 200 years of friendship between United States and Denmark. Senators from both parties opposing Trump's territorial demands. Republican Mitch McConnell said U.S. seizure would mean incinerating hard-won trust of loyal allies. Senators Chris Coons and Lisa Murkowski praised European troop deployments as NATO partners stepping up to secure Arctic. That's Republican senators contradicting their own president. That's Congress trying to reassure allies while administration threatens them. Think about the strategic insanity. Trump claims he needs Greenland for national security, to protect against Russian and Chinese aggression in Arctic. But threatening NATO allies only helps Russia and China, only divides Western alliance that checks their power, only creates opportunities for adversaries to exploit rifts. European leaders explicitly warning that Russia and China must be having field day watching NATO tear itself apart, that U.S. threats benefit exactly the adversaries Trump claims to oppose. Share this video with everyone you know because Time magazine analysis is devastating. Says Europeans so spooked that even Canadians drawing up plans for how to respond to U.S. invasion. That's how unhinged Trump's territorial demands appear. That close allies are preparing contingency plans for American military action against them. Said surreal moment created impression, NATO living on borrowed time. That Trump's indifference to alliance's future is fundamental threat to transatlantic security. And NPR analysis said, Trump's actions cross line that prompts blunt responses, even from allies who previously tried appeasement. That demand for territory belonging to Denmark, founding NATO member, fundamentally different from trade disputes or defense spending arguments. That European leaders recognizing they cannot accommodate Trump's territorial ambitions without destroying their own sovereignty, so they're deploying troops, threatening trade retaliation, making contingency plans, preparing for NATO's collapse. Notice what Washington Post reported about Pentagon drawdown. Trump plans to sunset U.S. troops' involvement in some NATO activities, letting posts go vacant rather than replacing personnel. That's not temporary adjustment, that's permanent reduction in American participation. That's signaling to allies that U.S. commitment is ending, that they need to prepare for future without American security guarantee. That NATO, as currently constituted, won't survive Trump's second term. Think about what Trump said at Davos. Complained NATO treated U.S. very badly, said we've never asked for anything and never got anything. But that's completely false. After 9/11 attacks, NATO countries invoked Article 5 for first and only time in alliance history, joined U.S. in Afghanistan war. Over 1,000 NATO troops from other countries killed supporting American-led operation. U.S. lost 2,400 troops, but allies died defending America too. That's NATO giving everything when U.S. needed help, and Trump claims they gave nothing. Trump portraying Europe as weak and unable to carry weight, demanding territorial concessions, threatening economic punishment, using military pressure. These are tactics autocrats use against adversaries, not how allies treat each other, not how democracies maintain partnerships. These are methods for domination, for coercion, for destroying alliances from within. Bottom line is this: Trump signaling major NATO shift through Pentagon drawdown of alliance participation and tariff threats against 8 founding members over Greenland demands. Allies panicking because they recognize this isn't negotiating tactic. This is fundamental change in American approach to transatlantic partnership. This is Trump systematically dismantling security framework that protected Europe and North America for 75 years. And nobody knows how to stop it. European leaders deploying troops to show solidarity. Canada pivoting toward China. Bipartisan senators trying to reassure allies. Foreign policy experts warning American-led order is ending. All happening simultaneously, all pointing to same conclusion. NATO, as we've known it, is collapsing. American commitment to collective defense is ending. And world order built after World War II is being destroyed by American president who sees alliances as weakness and coercion as strength. The panic is justified, because if Trump can threaten founding NATO member with military action, can demand territorial concessions under threat of tariffs, can systematically withdraw American participation from alliance activities, then every security guarantee is conditional. Every partnership is transactional. Every ally is expendable. That's not alliance system. That's empire demanding tribute. And European leaders understand they cannot accommodate those demands without surrendering sovereignty. So they're preparing for what comes next, boosting defense spending, coordinating independent of Washington, making contingency plans for NATO's collapse, building security frameworks that don't depend on American protection, because Trump's signals are unmistakable. Commitment to collective defense is over. Transatlantic partnership is ending. And allies need to prepare for a world where they cannot count on United States. This story continues. Stay tuned. Because NATO crisis is intensifying. Pentagon drawdown proceeding. Tariff deadlines approaching. European troop deployments continuing. And nobody knows if there's diplomatic off-ramp or if Trump actually intent on destroying alliance. Canadian Prime Minister says world order tumbling down. Foreign policy experts say American-led system is over. European leaders warn NATO living on borrowed time, all pointing to fundamental shift in international relations, all suggesting what comes next is world where American alliances cannot be trusted, where NATO no longer guarantees security, where every country fends for itself. Watch for next crisis, watch for alliance breaking point, watch for moment when European leaders decide they cannot accommodate Trump's demands without destroying their own sovereignty. That moment is coming. And when it arrives, 75 years of transatlantic partnership ends. Stay tuned.